lovely to be here on this slightly rainy day. As Erin said, my name's Laura Hamilton O'Hara. I am the CEO of the Living Future Institute of Australia, and we are aiming to achieve a living future through socially just, culturally rich, and ecologically restorative means. And we use really the built environment as a vehicle, so it feels really lovely and fitting to be here hosting today. Physically, I'm coming to you from the lands of the Gurungai people, so just sort of North Sydney, but digitally, the room that you're in, and hopefully you're in the right room, yeah, we're creating a healthy home. And the topic was from biophilic design to materials selection. So we've got quite a lot of scope to cover today, but particularly excited about both biophilic design and materials are particular passions of mine. Welcome to all of you for joining us on a Sunday morning. I hope you've sort of caffeinated and breakfasted and settled in for a lovely morning. We are going to explore 4 beautiful homes. I hope you've had a look at the website and had a look at the videos. I was definitely having a little explore this week, and yeah, happy to try out any of those homes if anyone's looking for a test case or someone to write something about them. They're absolutely gorgeous, so excited to explore them. Erin's already given you a couple of housekeeping tips, and I know we've all been on Zoom quite a lot lately, so you probably don't need too much information. I've certainly become a Zoom ninja in the last 6 weeks, but just 2 things to keep in mind. Please use the Q&A function for any questions that you might have. And then the other function we'll be using is chat. So definitely use that for, I'm going to pose maybe a couple of questions to the audience, or if you're interacting with each other, definitely use the chat function. Okay, I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to let's get to meeting all of our houses, shall we? So our first house sounds very Harry Potter. Let's meet our houses. Our first house today is Milton's Hidden Eco Oasis, and I think it's Davina. Hi, Davina.
Hi, Laura.
How are you?
Very well. How are you today?
Good. Tell us about your house and you.
Yes, so I'm Davina, and this is Trev.
Morning.
Hi, Trev.
We own a sustainable and biophilic building and design company down on the New South Wales South Coast. So we have a sustainable approach to all our building design and construction, and a biophilic. We use biophilic principles as well. So this is the house. This is our latest project that we've just done.
Great, thank you. Looking forward to having a good chat with you. Our next house is Kenzai, and I think it's Jacqueline. Hi.
Hello, sorry, just unmuting. Hi. Yes, Kenzai is my house in Sydney. I'm also an interior designer. So we lived in the house for a long time before we renovated it, so knew all its problems, which were many. When you are renovating rather than doing a new build, there's so much to address and there's so many compromises. But being a designer, I got to unleash all my sort of crazy ideas that clients would never let me explore in their homes. So there's a lot of color, there's a lot of experimentation with materials, there's a lot of recycling, there's a lot of using materials from other places and different uses and adapting them. But the key for our renovation was to address the systems before we addressed how it looked and its materiality. So I think there's so much to talk about in terms of creating a healthy home. Hopefully we'll get to cover as much as we can today.
Great, welcome. Our third house is Radiata, and I think it's Vicky. Hi, Vicky.
Laura, thank you very much. Look, my name's Vicky and I'm from Timberset Homes. Timberset Homes has been around for a long time, but just my son and I took over a couple of years ago. We just love the concept and building. We really love the environment. So I guess building in solid timber, we felt was a really strong environmental message. And there's so many health and thermal benefits of building in solid timber. And building the Radiata, which is just a small 1-bedroom display home for us, was an opportunity to showcase what we do and the things that we think are important. And that's when I really started to ramp up my knowledge of building biology, and took a few courses, and actually met Tiffany Richardson from Building, I think her business was called Healthy Buildings Australia, that's right. Engaged her to help us with a few things. And once I got on this journey, I just realised as a builder how challenging it is to incorporate all of these concepts when building a home. So I'm really glad to have the opportunity to talk to everyone today about some of those challenges, and you know, really enthusiastic to be on the panel and sharing the very many vast ideas around this concept.
Amazing. Thank you, Vicky. And our last house today is Warehouse Greenhouse. Nathan, hi.
Hello. My name is Nathan, and I'm just a civilian. I'm not really in the sustainable industry or anything. And I just thought I needed to fix my place and thought I'd apply as many principles as I could. So last year, we just finished converting our 1960s warehouse just 4 kilometres north of Melbourne CBD. It was exactly as you'd expect. We'd been living here for a few years with big leaky factory windows and all that kind of stuff. Basically a building that was never intended to be lived in. Close to main roads, noise and all that kind of thing. So we decided to build a lightweight, modern structure within the walls of the old, try and leave the old as untouched as possible. So zinc aluminum on the outside and 100% Australian eco-ply on the inside. I guess we just used less wherever we could. So things like whitewashing, we used a lot less paint, all that kind of thing, natural oils. And yeah, just solving all of the various problems. We had a great team. We had a really good experience. They're sort of recycling everything they could on site. They even had reusable coffee cups for all the staff and all that kind of stuff. So it was really great. And yeah, we just had a really fun experience, and really happy to finish it just in time for lockdown.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Thanks for giving us a lovely window into all 4 homes. Luckily, the Q&A has led me very nicely into my very first question. Biphilic design is certainly an up-and-coming design principle. It's kind of one of those that has been around forever, but is gaining in traction and popularity at the moment. And I sort of think COVID has in some ways helped it. It's almost that the fact that we're locked inside has really kind of driven this need to connect with the outdoors. And I think we're certainly noticing a massive interest in biophilic design. So I'm going to start with actually the participants. We've got quite a number of different people on the line. And what I'd love to just pose to you on the chat in just a couple of words, what do you understand by the term biophilic design? And there's no right or wrong answer here. I'm just really curious. It's not a term that many people have come across sort of broadly. So yeah, no idea, not surprised. So I'd love to hear what you know about it. Never heard of it before. Yeah, bringing nature indoors, loving nature, connecting with nature. Yeah, healthy living, environmentally friendly materials, lots of no idea. Tree in a house, oh, that's so lovely. Literally nothing. Yeah, so great. So there's some people who've got somewhat of an idea and others who don't. There somebody gave us a definition, biophilic loving. Yes, fantastic. That's definitely the closest. Indoor outdoor space, connecting with nature. Yeah, no idea. Beautiful. Thanks everybody. So a really wide range of knowledge around biophilic design. So yes, biophilic comes from love of life, and it's using the idea that I guess we're part of nature. And so what we should be designing is things that are habitat rather than sort of just human storage boxes is the idea. Thinking about nature, so greenery and plants, and that's really the basic level. But there's also things like textures, patterns, multi-sensory, and thinking about all sorts of things that you would experience outdoors. And I'm looking over my computer at the moment because I can see a lot of green space. But it's thinking about how complex and multi-sensory the outdoors is, and bringing that indoors as much as possible. It was coined by a man called E.O. Wilson, and was codified by someone called Stephen Kellett into a number of principles. So there's an entire framework for biophilic design. So my first question to the panel is, and approach this however you'd like to, but how and probably why did you incorporate biophilic design into your homes? And I might start from the top. So Davina, would you like to start? Davina and Trev, would you like to start kind of answering that question?
Yeah, sure, Lauren. So we try to make our homes as healthy as possible, and over 90% of our time nowadays is spent indoors, whether it be in our homes, in our cars, or in our offices, and most of those areas have sick building syndrome. So it's really important for us to be able to reconnect people back to nature and bring that nature back into our buildings as much as possible.
And could you give us a specific example in your building of how you've incorporated it?
Yeah, so we build with a lot of glass, a lot of glazing, so superior glazing, so that we can see outside. We use a lot of natural products, a lot of natural cladding. So we use WeatherTex cladding where possible, which is 97% timber and 3% wax. So beautiful Australian product that's zero carbon and sustainable as well. We use a lot of bamboo planting in our gardens, which we planted before we started building. So bamboo actually creates 30% more oxygen than a standard tree, a tree's the same size. And it also sequesters a lot of carbon out of the air. So it creates a healthier environment for you and for the people of the house as well.
Beautiful. So that glass kind of like blends the outdoors, indoors idea, being able to see. Amazing. Jacqueline?
Yeah, so the biophilic for me really made sense when I understood it's about addressing all the senses. Because I think with building, we often think about how something looks. And it's something I'm constantly trying to tell clients that we need to think about other things than how things look. So addressing the sounds you can hear. So for example, in hospitals, biophilic design has become a bit more important because we understand that people need to hear nature. People need to see nature. How you deal with the tactile side of things is, the materiality of things. So it's not just how things look, it's how they feel. Smell is so important. I mean, I knew when I used cedar on the outside of our building and on the inside that we were going to get that amazing smell. And unfortunately, I can't smell it anymore, but people coming into the building can. And it does, you have that connection to nature, and subconsciously you have that connection to well-being. So things like fresh air are so key, and we often leave them to sort of last. Or how are we going to get fresh air into the building? Sometimes you have a bit of a compromise. So this house is right beside the ocean, and we needed to really well insulate it and have double glazing, etc. Once we put all that in and closed all the windows, we couldn't hear the sea anymore. We'd insulated ourselves so well, we couldn't hear that external environment. So I miss that in winter. And as soon as spring comes around, I can't wait to get doors and windows open so I can not just feel fresh air, hear my surroundings. So it's a real connection to nature in the materials, but also just to your external environment, whatever nature is around you.
Beautiful, thank you. Vicky, how might you approach that question?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Jacqueline. I think it's a sensory experience. Jacqueline, I think it's something that was what attracted us to this building system in the first place, because the actual system that we use is solid timber. It's a structural system using plantation grown radiata pine, hence the name of the display. So actually, the biophilic benefits are actually integrated into the home. You don't have to have the structural timber exposed, but as you can see, it's a very lovely feature. It means that your home is a bit like, and if people still don't quite get what biophilia means, it's the reason why we go to the bush for a lovely walk, and that how wonderful we feel when we go there. That's biophilia. That's us connecting with nature. And so when we bring those elements into the home, you know, that really does make you feel good. There's a whole study of this that proves that our mood is better, that, you know, it's just mentally really good for us, plus a whole lot of benefits that we can't even quantify. So the first element for us is certainly encouraging people to leave the timber of our homes exposed, because it's a really important sensory feature. In fact, when people walk into our display, you know, there's almost this sigh that is released. You know, it's quite a different experience to a lot of the volume builder type situations where, you know, you're just confronted with a lot of artificial smells. In fact, this is quite different, where you come in and there's no other smells. There's just this slight hint of nature. It's very hard to describe. I suppose you could say it's the timber. And then there's a whole lot of other things that are important in the design. Not everyone can live by the ocean or in lovely places to be able to get nature around them. But wherever you can, building a home that can make the most of the assets of the site is also really important, so that you can bring as much of those natural elements inside, you know, hide out those man-made noises and elements, and bring in as much and plant out as much on the outside.
Thanks, Vicky. And Nathan, you may be new, I believe, to sort of biophilic design, but I think some of these things, although there's terminology around it, is almost quite innate and instinctual. So I wondered, in what ways do you think kind of biophilic design featured in your house?
Well, I guess probably the main way is prior to renovating, we had no outdoor space at all. There was no wildlife, there was no plants, there was no anything other than a few indoor plants. So I guess just adding an outdoor area, we now get to see birds and all that kind of stuff. Probably the other one in terms of a connection to nature is the decision to use eco-ply instead of plaster. So pretty much anywhere where you are in the house, you can see beautiful wood grain walls. And I mean, we were originally a little bit worried about the yellowing of plywood. So yeah, just whitewashing it, but enough to still see the beautiful textures and grains and all that pretty much everywhere we look. It's probably the main way.
Amazing, thank you. And I think all of you have spoken quite a lot to kind of textures and multi-sensory, but one of the probably lesser known aspects of biophilic design is very psychological as well. So things like prospect and refuge, or the idea of being able to be safe but see far. And I think when I saw your house, Nathan, awe is another part of biophilic design, and just like the double space, how spacious it is, felt really like when you're standing at the edge of a cliff and you can see really far. It made me feel like that. So yeah.
And I mean, we're living in a warehouse, so it just made sense to hold on to that, not to just fill it up with little boxes. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Okay, so I'm going to go to the chat. We've got a couple of questions in the chat. A couple of quite specific ones, so I might get someone to maybe type the answers to that, but let's see. I'm currently building and feeling overwhelmed by the amount of toxic ingredients in most materials and limited options. Do you have any tips for low tox housing on a shoestring budget? Is there anyone who would like to maybe approach that? And feel free to do the old school, put your hand up and I'll call on you. Jacqueline, go for it.
Not sure I can talk to the shoestring budget. It is difficult. But in terms of finding materials, there are some really helpful resources. So if you look at, the International Living Future Institute has, for its Living Building Challenge, what's called a red list. So you can actually go and have a look at, Laura can tell you the actual web address. It will give you a list of ingredients so that you can actually begin asking questions when you're looking for supplies, when you're buying supplies, when you're looking at websites, or just talking to local contractors. There's also Eco Specifier online, where you can look at different products and materials specifically. There is GECA, G-E-C-A, so the Good Environmental Choice Australia website. They also have listings there of all sorts of different products, as well as cleaning and kind of the getting into, I know why you're overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed with every project, because it's not just for, say, trying to find a tile that's, you know, got some sort of eco credentials. You then got to think about the grout and the glue and everything that goes with it. A really key thing is finding a good contractor who you can talk to and who won't switch off when you say, can we do a little bit more research? Can we look into that a little bit more? Can we try and find an alternative to that? Someone who'll collaborate with you is really important. And if you're doing it yourself, you just have to really engage in research and in looking around for both finding something that's got eco credentials, but also that might suit your budget.
Great, thank you. Vicky, I'm assuming you're off mute. Do you want to chip into that conversation?
Yeah, not much to add really. That was good advice, but there's definitely some good resources out there. You know, I got engaged a building biology person, but there's actually not a lot of credentials in Australia, but there are some coming. It's a much wider, I suppose, profession in Europe. So, but if you can engage someone, and it's important to you to get, you know, someone that knows a bit about this stuff, and there's definitely resources that are freely available, if not through these consultants that are relatively inexpensive to engage, just for a little bit of advice. They're passionate about this stuff, so they don't charge a lot of money to give you a lot of really good information.
Beautiful, Vicky. Davina or Nathan, anyone want to chip in on this?
I guess I took the easier option, which was just to find an architect that had done a lot of that research for me. It's not really the shoestring option, but...
Yeah, no, that's bring in some professionals. That's certainly helpful. Davina and Trev?
Yeah, you're governed a lot by the BCA. It's easy to say I use raw natural timbers, but you've also got the structural side of it, the white ant side of it, the pests. If that we try to get our houses up off the ground. I know every block's different, but that gets away the pest scenario. So once you've got a visual space to check on the white ants, you can then use less harmful toxic things above that line, the safety line. Obviously you can't in your garages and stuff like that, but yeah, you do have to do a lot of research with what is passable in the BCA. So the Building Code of Australia, the Australian standards. I'd suggest employ someone that knows and can give advice. That was good advice.
You also have to be careful, like in bushfire zones and things like that, as to what materials you're going to use as well. But there are some beautiful products out there now that are sustainable and you know, zero carbon and energy efficient and you know, really natural. So you might have to pay a little bit more in the beginning, but overall you're going to have a better quality and a better health. You know, you'll have a healthier home as well.
Lovely. Yeah, and I think there's been quite a few projects now that have happened, so they've sort of paved the way for, I think suppliers are much more across sort of materials and materials transparency. I'm speaking quite generally here, obviously not everybody is. Certainly going down the eco certification road, so as Jacqueline mentioned, GECA or the Declare label, and then probably the one that all our project teams use is keep your materials palette quite small, research really well and kind of keep your materials palette small. Yeah. There was a very specific question about exposed timber and insulation. So how have you kept timber structures exposed and seeing those beautiful beams as well as keeping it warm? Does anyone have some thoughts on that? How do you keep yourself snug?
Insulation is one. You've got to research that, and that also goes back to biophilic, I suppose, of the health versions of insulation's come a long way. Yeah, it's mainly cavities help. Yeah, types of insulation. So, what would you say?
Yeah, we don't use a lot of exposed timber anymore. We use a lot of
Well, the WeatherTex is
except for the WeatherTex cladding. We use a lot of structural insulated panels to give us that really high R value. So, you know, in a standard house, you're looking at an R value of about 2.5, whereas we can get to an R value of 4, 5 even, you know, possibly even more. So it is really important, but if you're going to put exposed timbers in your house, then you do need to look at the thermal breaks and things that you're going to get with those timbers as well, and really good quality insulation is really important to get that comfort in a timber house.
Thank you. I think, Vicky, were you off mute? I think, and then we'll go to Jacqueline after that.
Yeah, look, I think given we build in timber, I know a fair bit about the timber situation. Look, it does depend on what you're doing, of course, but you can always add insulation to every situation. It really comes down to design, and sometimes people, you know, just want that view and just want a roof like this or like that, and it really is important to look at the overall design elements and what you're able to fit in. We have 45 mil thick walls, and then we add insulation. We can do R4, and then we add also WeatherTex cladding. So, you know, design is really by far the most important way, and then the building method secondary to get in a well-insulated home.
Thank you. Yeah, expert advice there. Thanks, Vicky. Jacqueline?
I was just going to say, we've got timber cladding on the lining on the ceiling, which you probably can't see super well here. But actually that is what is concealing the insulation that we added to this house. So to insulate this ground floor was too difficult on the roof side. So we insulated between battens on the ceiling and then lined it. So sometimes it's not just exposed, it's actually hiding the insulation in the first place.
Thank you. There's a question here specifically for Jacqueline, but I'm going to open it up a little bit more broadly. A couple of you have used recycled elements in your house and materials. I think it was in your video, Jacqueline, where you talked about recycled hardwoods, and it was a big investment and a bit of a slog. But could you all talk a little bit about, like, where do you find recycled materials? What's the process that you go through to get them? Just a little bit of insight into how on earth do you incorporate recycled materials well into your house?
I wish I had a really good answer to this, but again, it's a lot of research, quite a lot of luck. You know, in my work, I do a huge amount of research and reading and looking at websites and talking to people. But I mean, sometimes it's luck and sometimes it's opportunism. I have an awful lot of recycled material and furniture from a yoga studio that shut down, was architect designed, was full of eco cedar joinery, and I got to basically cart out of there almost as much as I could put in a truck. So that was luck, but you can sometimes find building supply places which just supply recycled stuff from buildings. So I have found bench tops and stuff like that there. eBay, you know, Gumtree, all these sorts of things. A lot of people actually do try and sell building materials, plumbing, you know, fixtures, fittings, all that sort of thing. You've just got to be careful with the quality that you're getting. You've always got to be careful with the quality. But there's not, like, I'd love to be able to give you a couple of websites where you could just go, oh, look here, but I'm still always on the lookout too. So if any other panelists can pass that on, that would be great.
Yeah, it still feels like a bit of a detective work, I think. I feel like there's really a need for some sort of aggregator of all of these materials that are available. Nathan, did you use any recycled materials in Warehouse Greenhouse, or how did you approach that?
Yeah, I feel like we're a little bit on the lucky side of the spectrum. So I guess the first thing is our carpenter was obsessed with recycling and reusing everything he could. And as soon as they peeled back our old roof, which they needed to remove, they found all the purlins were old growth Australian hardwood. And so we immediately stashed all of those and turned those all into our bench tops and vanities and our stair treads and all that kind of stuff. He even took that, when he took down all the framing, he cut them all up and used those as the nogs in the new frames. They managed to find recycled ironbark timber for our deck. So I think mostly I would attribute it to just the hard work of the carpenter and the builder and being committed to our goals as well.
Yeah, I think that really emphasizes the need for a team that's really across like the why of why you're doing this. I think it helps so much from a perspective of you can't possibly be there the entire time. So everyone needs to be bought into the, I guess, the philosophy of the building to do it justice. And yeah, you certainly had a good team. Davina and Trev, do you have something you want to chip into this?
There's quite a lot of timber companies out there that are doing recycled and salvaged flooring. So all our floors are salvaged flooring, all timber. And
it's harder to put down. Sometimes the floorboards are set in their ways. It's a bit hard to coach them back into the straight line sort of thing. But I think, as Nathan said, if you find the carpenter that wants to work that way, you've got to probably do your research on your tradies. And if you do find a carpenter that loves to use it, or a builder, they tend to have electricians and plumbers that they work in with all the time. They get along together. They get the same mindset. So just do your interviews.
There's quite a few companies in Tasmania that'll do salvaged timber as well. So and Victoria is really good for that as well. So it's just a matter of getting online and sourcing them. And like Trev said, find the trades that actually want to use the products.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's all about the team. I think while we're on you, Davina and Trev, there's a specific question around what was the cladding called in Milton House?
So it's a WeatherTex.
Yeah. So it's a natural WeatherTex. It's guaranteed for 25 years in its raw state. So that's what we loved. Even inside, we've used it in this room here. We didn't use any gyprock throughout the whole house. We've just, where we've had, if we've had any stud frame walls, we've insulated it and then just put WeatherTex on the facade of it. So yeah, we really love the product.
It's Australian product, and it was the first product in the world to be certified for platinum zero carbon status, and it's beautiful in its natural state. So if you leave it, it'll go grey, or you can stain it and so it retains that beautiful brown colour that you can see behind us here. When we were in the bushfires over summer, our cladding, actually we had a lot of sprinklers on, and it went it went grey really, really quick. So the photos that we've got on our site, we've actually done our own treatment on that to bring them back to that colour. But
great. Thanks. Thank you. So coming back to the questions, a couple more specific ones. One from Mrs. Robin. What should we look for when shopping for cabinetry in kitchens if we want to achieve a healthy home? Does anyone have some specific ideas? Vicky's nodding, so I feel like, Vicky, you might know something about cabinetry. Go for it.
Yeah, I suspect Jacqueline does as well. Yeah, look, it's a pretty tricky area, but we're really talking about the particle board is a problem area in terms of off-gassing, and the cupboards, the actual substrate of the cupboards is usually made of a common particle board. I guess it depends on your budget and how important you think the actual cabinetry, whether that should be changed, but there are E0, which is no or very low formaldehyde options available. There is a premium. It's about a 30% at least premium for the E0 cabinetry for the carcass. But there's more and more options for the actual cupboards and some of the bench tops coming out there as well now. So just remember, they're all different products. You know, you've got the carcass, which you can get for E0, then you can get the cabinetry, the cupboards, for instance, which can also be different products. And one that we use that I love is, it's called Optimat. It's E0, so that means it's also no off-gassing, but it's actually recycled PET, which is fantastic as well on the surface. So I love that one. And the bench tops, we used a product called Paper Rock, which is actually mostly recycled paper, and it's cured in such a way that it's also very, very hardy and again, E0.
Thanks, Vicky. You mentioned you mentioned off-gassing there. Some people might not know what that means. Would you mind giving us a little bit of a what is off-gassing?
Well, off-gassing, yeah, thanks. That's a big question.
Hard question.
Well, no, it's the sort of thing that technically off-gassing, you know, if you paint a wall, you can smell it until it dries. This is where VOCs come in, you know, and that's part of this whole topic of off-gassing. It's basically the process of sometimes you can smell it and sometimes you can't. Products that are industrialized products usually, because they're in their manufacturing process or in their makeup, they contain compounds, and they're very, very, very common. It is really hard to find products without some sort of off-gassing, and this is why the research is so important. So you're looking for either low VOC, low toxicity, or E0 when it comes to certain products. All very confusing jargon, but all of these things have become metrics for the amount of off-gassing that products will produce.
And VOC there that you just mentioned is volatile organic compound. So again, quite a few of you mentioned VOCs actually in your sort of videos. Would anyone like to just say a little bit about, you know, why did you think about that, and how did you even approach that? Jacqueline?
VOCs are, so they vaporize at room temperature, right? So I listened to an interview quite a few years back now with a specialist on this, and he said that often the off-gassing of chemicals inside your home is worse than if you just went and stood out in a busy street and breathed in car fumes. And that just set me on a road where I started to understand we're putting all these layers of things in our homes that are constantly off-gassing. And like Vicky said, sometimes you can smell them. Like you get into a new car, you can smell that. You can smell those chemicals coming off all those new things. Some you can't. They're still vaporizing and they're still in the air. So that question of air quality in the house, indoor air quality, became far more important to me, and it is becoming far more important within sort of, I want to say construction industry, I want to say the design industry, but actually I couldn't talk about them as a whole. They're really not focusing on those things as a whole. In the green design field, in specialist areas, people are really looking at this. And what gets my goat a lot is you know, there's mainstream products that say they're low VOC, but that they're really not going far enough, and you really need to be looking for VOC free if you can, and you really need to be pushing for it. We need to push for it as consumers as much as we need to push for it as professionals.
And indoor air quality, of course, is becoming extremely important during this COVID time, and buildings are looking at that for sure. So hopefully inadvertently that will cause a bit of a catalyst for this. Davina and Trev, did you have something to add?
Yeah, we use as many natural products inside as possible. So we use, you know, linen curtains, organic cotton if we can't get linen. We're very, very careful on what fabrics we use and what furniture we buy as well. So, you know, most furniture these days is treated with, you know, all sorts of chemicals and things like that. And they'll off-gas in your home for months and months and months, and sometimes even years, depending on, you know, how treated they are and where they're coming from. So, you know, it's really, really important to do your research and find out where your furniture is coming from and where it's made and how it is treated, and to go as natural as possible with all your, with everything that you put in your home, even down to your cleaners, you know, your kitchen bench cleaners and all that sort of stuff. So, you know, any chemicals that you put through your home is going to create a sick building syndrome. So it's really important to look at everything from the design to what products you're building with, to what you're cleaning with as well. And, you know, even down to your bed linen and what you're sleeping in and your mattresses, and, you know, it just keeps going and going and going, you know. But it is really important to make sure that you are living in a healthy house.
So take the time to stop and sort of think about it and research.
Definitely.
So there's a very specific question. I might start with Nathan, actually. What are you using for doors? and how is that kind of keeping, preventing drafts and, you know, keeping it, you know, heating and cooling or blocking out sound?
I guess we didn't really get the super fancy doors. So we did do a blower door test, and we did go down the whole air tightness path.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't go all the way. I mean, it's a converted warehouse, so there was only so much we could do. But yeah, just reasonable quality doors with good seals, a drop seal where we needed one, that kind of thing. Nothing too fancy, I don't think.
Great. Anyone else have some door stories?
We use all double glazed thermally broken doors, internal and external. So it just ensures that natural light all the way through the house, and privacy and sound as well, so, and comfort.
Great, thank you. There's been a couple of questions that have come through with a similar theme around circular economy and circularity. We've already touched a bit about using recycled products, but how does your house fit into the circular economy? And does anyone have a plan in terms of like built for disassembly, like what happens to your house or what could happen to your house afterwards? Anyone like to start on that very big and complex topic?
I guess I'll just give you a couple of comments about that, because it is something that we've thought about. Unfortunately, there's, a lot of products in the building industry that just, this sort of stuff hasn't been thought through, and it takes people like us to push it. But we build in prefabricated where possible, and I think that that's a really sustainable way to build. It gives more options for people with homes, and I think in terms of the circular economy, I think that's open up the door quite a lot. And then definitely the natural products that decompose, of course, are certainly better used and can be recycled more often, usually as well. I mean, you've got to. I really like to take the opportunity to say that we're talking about, healthy homes and building biology, and they're really important issues. But a lot of people, I think, tuning in will also be interested in environmental aspects. And actually, it's really easy to get confused. One is not necessarily the other. And concrete is a really good example of that. You could say that you could recycle concrete, yeah, but it is the biggest embodied footprint of any industrialized product, and it will take a huge amount of energy also to recycle it. So these are complex questions. Sorry.
Yeah, they certainly are, and kind of looking at anything sort of from a life cycle perspective is really complex. But I'm really heartened by the fact that people are starting to think about this, and even if it's imperfect right now, it's I feel like it's kind of going in the right direction. Would anyone else like to talk about circularity or circular economy, or how you've thought about the whole house life cycle?
I think something that I battle is the idea of trends, and things like the block and other show, sorry, I shouldn't say the actual name, but you know, really fast design, really quick setups. You know, Bob's your uncle, you've got a new house next week. We've got to take more time over things, and we've got to think long term in order to be able to try and get that circularity happening. And I know from living in this house for about 8 years before we renovated, which is common, right? We mostly can't afford to renovate when we first buy a place, where usually there's quite a long time frame. And I made sure that everything I had to replace in the house before I did the renovation was a look and quality that was kind of classic, and I could use it in the future. So I had to install some new lighting, some new tapware. I committed to reusing that. So if I bought something new over like that sort of 8 years, I was using that when I renovated. That was part of the bigger long-term project. And look, the lighting has worked perfectly. The tapware has worked perfectly. And there's also another thing where I looked at what existing materials could we reuse. So the bench tops in the kitchen, which were goddamn ugly and horrible, but were granite, I reused them in bathrooms. So we cut them right down, and in a smaller amount, actually they were quite palatable. And then I built the color palette around them. So it's kind of, you got to commit to reusing and then designing around that reuse as well.
Thanks, Jacqueline. There's a good question, I think, in the Q&A that I might sort of just expand out a little bit around. Is there anything that you put in your house that maybe wasn't ideal, or that you didn't really want to, but you had to for one reason or another? I might just expand that slightly out around, people often tell the story of their projects, and it kind of like, this is what we thought we'd do, and then ta-da, it's done. And it's this really straight line of how this happened. But kind of, what was the squiggle? Where did things go wrong that you maybe didn't expect, and how did you handle that? And that might be kind of to do with materials, but approach that however you'd like. Nathan.
Yeah, I guess originally we thought we were just making a minor addition, not minor, but just an addition. But once the engineer got involved, it turned into more of almost a conservation project. And that basically meant a lot more steel than we would have liked. I mean, the steel look kind of works in a warehouse, but there's obviously the embodied energy and the thermal bridging and all that stuff that comes along with it. So that's probably our biggest one, and the cost. At the time, we could have looked into other ways to stabilize this very old structure, but by that time, just all this time had passed and the wheels were in motion, and we just had to bite that bullet, basically.
Great. Yeah, thank you. There's quite a few questions about thermal bridging in the chat, so I might come back to you on that one. Any other squiggle stories? No, everything went well? Everything went as you expected? Okay, so I might stay with you, Nathan, and then just talk about, let me find that question. Well, there is a question on heat exchange and ventilation and systems to improve air quality. So what are your thoughts on heat exchange, ventilation systems and air quality? Does anyone want to approach that tech question? Go for it, Jacqueline.
I'm no expert, I have to say, but yeah, we have these units in our house, and the heat exchange units. And previously this house had really, really poor air quality because it's built into a hill. And so there was a lot of dampness. So, in treating that and then in insulating the house really well, which we all want to do to minimize our energy costs, we had to think about air quality and getting fresh air in and out. And for that, they are fantastic. I think of them as the lungs of the house, and it doesn't matter if every door and window is closed. I still got fresh air coming into the house quietly. And I have had someone test, are we losing any warmth through that? And really, no, we're not. They do what they say they're going to do. So I couldn't recommend them more highly in terms of a kind of getting a system set up in your house where you can create heat and a nice insulated comfort zone, but also keeping fresh air part of the equation.
Thank you. Great, everyone else has got their microphones off, so I'm going to assume we're done with. There's a specific question about plants actually, and plants and their summer cooling. Can you tell us more about the way that you use plants and the best species for growth and management of plants and pruning to help cool the home in summer? And is that part of biophilic design? Has anyone kind of used plants strategically in terms of their heating and cooling?
Yeah, so we, like I said before, we use a lot of bamboo. So our bamboo has been planted as a living privacy screen, but also as a UV and a wind barrier. So bamboo is really good for filtering UV rays. So it actually, you know, protects you from those UV rays and also protects your furniture as well. And double glazing will do that too. It also protects you from damaging winds. So like where we are, the westerlies are really bad. So the bamboo actually protects us from the westerlies and from the southerlies as well. And they also create, because they're creating more oxygen around the home, they create that cooling effect through summer as well.
I think a couple of people have mentioned something around bamboo not being an indigenous or native species. Is there anything that you know of that is native that maybe has some of the same benefits as bamboo? It's a tricky one, that.
Well, you know, bamboo's been around for a long time and it's very, very sustainable. So, you know, there are a lot of natives out there that can use, but bamboo grows so fast. So it gives you that living privacy screen really, really quick. It also stabilizes your watershed. So if you've got any water problems on your block, bamboo is fantastic for it. So, you know, it might not be as native as some Australian plants, but it's a fantastic plant to use anywhere in Australia. So it also sequesters a lot of carbon. So you're actually helping the environment and creating a healthy environment for yourself as well. And it's green all year, so it's beautiful.
And how far from the house is the bamboo planted? Was a question that came through.
So the bamboo is, we actually have bamboo all the way around our block.
Yeah, we had a bit of a blank canvas, so we planted 65 bamboo around the block, right around the perimeter, before we even started building. So it was just easier that way than going through with a shovel afterwards.
Great, no, thank you.
Can I just add, there's an app called Plant Life Balance, which you can get for free, and it gives a lot of good information on plants, what qualities they add, you know, in terms of air cleaning and oxygen, different sort of styles, and you can actually use your phone to look at a space and in real time place different plants in it, different sizes, and it will tell you how many plants in that space would be necessary to clean your air to this degree. So that's Plant Life Balance. It's very useful.
Yeah, great. I use that app quite a lot as well. From Violet, how do you balance doing your own research versus getting experts in a cost-effective way? I imagine it probably depends on the situation, but I might start with Nathan if you're okay. What did you think about that?
That was an interesting one because I kind of went down quite a few rabbit holes during the process. And I guess one of the things I learned was that sustainability means different things to different people. And so, I don't know, you just have to have a dialogue. You follow what you find interesting. You talk it out with all of the professionals that you've got involved. And hopefully by the end, you come up with something that works.
Thank you. Did anyone have a different way of approaching that? Or if you did all your own research, sort of what kind of time commitment did that take?
I never stop. I just never stop. I'm always reading magazines, looking at talks, looking at websites, but it is my job. So I'm more obsessed than most.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that, Davina and Trev?
Yeah, definitely. That's what we do. We source sustainable products for our clients. So, like Jacqueline said, it's a never-ending process, and we've been researching sustainable chemical-free products for the last 20 years. So, it's there's more and more products coming out on the market, and you just need to keep learning about them and upgrading your knowledge. But it's a long process.
And it's a learning, it's never done really. It is a learning journey. So you kind of, as you say, you're always doing it. I have a question for you, Vicky, actually. I love that you've built this house as a display home. And I think one thing that's very obvious with all of your homes is that sustainability doesn't mean doing without. Sustainability can mean a lot of beautiful, incredible, creative buildings. And I love that you've sort of demonstrated that, each of you. You built this as a display home, Vicky, but sort of what were you hoping to achieve with kind of it being the display home concept?
I think that really comes back to the earlier discussion. Pictures are wonderful, but it's actually the sensory experience that you just can't, you can't convey through a photo. So that's what we thought was really important. And there's also, as we've discovered today, and we've only just scratched the surface on this topic around healthy homes. And when you're talking about sustainable homes and more broadly, it's just a very, very, very big topic. And if we can talk to people in person and demonstrate it at the same time, you can learn this stuff for years and still not know everything. And there will be different points of view, of course. There is already, even in the industry. So, I really love the fact that we're actually helping to educate. We're converting people in lots of ways in their thinking. Because people, when they look at a display home, a big common display home, then they come to us, and it's such a different experience, and they're getting educated. And I hope in the process we're converting people to think more conscientiously about what they're doing.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more, just how big this topic is. And we really have only just touched a couple of points. But I think what you've just said is bang on around seeing is believing, and being inspired is even better. So thank you so much, all four of you, for sharing your incredible homes today. I wish I could chat to you for the next couple of hours, but it was really lovely to spend a few minutes kind of talking about your homes. And thank you so much for sharing.